We're all good on the live stream. Do you want me to start letting everyone in from the waiting room?
Yes, we can definitely keep going on the waiting room. That'd be great. And in a moment, when Cornelia is ready to get started, we can also start the recording.
Yep. So usually I'll wait when it says recording in progress, then I'll start.
Ooh, that's helpful. Thank you.
Yes.
Well, we can get started.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Cornelia Stevens, and I'm the Executive Director of Top Priority Learning Centers in Wichita, Kansas. And I have the privilege of being the chair of the Early Childhood Recommendations panel. I'd like to welcome you all again to this morning's meeting and to thank all of our panel members for taking time out of your morning, the busy week that we have, to actually be here and help us kind of guide the direction of early childhood programs and give recommendations or whatnot for the state of Kansas. This morning, please know that this morning's meeting is remote, and so we do have people who will be watching it virtually, and so the meeting materials are posted on the panel meetings website at the Children's Cabinet site, which is kschildrenscabinet.org. Panel members, we ask you to clearly identify yourselves when you begin to speak. You can use the raise hands feature to show that you would like to share a comment. It is not a requirement, but it is helpful so that we know if there's anybody that wants to speak and we don't miss your comment. So for today's agenda, we'll have our welcome, which I'm doing now. We're going to have the approval of the January agenda, approval of our December meeting minutes, the Kansas Open Forum, an early childhood system update, preschool development planning grant update, the 2023 panel proposed tactic work groups, bright spots. So panel members start thinking about bright spots that you would like to share with everyone. We'll talk about upcoming meetings, and then we will adjourn our meeting for today. So there will be no breakout sessions in today's meeting. So the first step, the first action item that we have is to approve our January agenda. So the agenda was sent out by Lindsay on Wednesday, I believe. And so if are there any changes or amendments or anything like that needed to the January agenda? I do not believe I see any. And so if that is the case, may I have a motion to approve the January agenda?
Saldana Chestnut, I move to approve.
Perfect. May I have a second?
This is Jennifer Adema. I second.
Perfect. All those in favor, give me a thumbs up. Or perfect. Any opposed, same sign. No opposition, the January agenda is approved. We also have the December minutes that were sent out. There is a minor adjustment that was made to the minutes, and I believe it was just someone's name. I think it was the spelling of a name or whatnot. So nothing, in terms of like subject matter or anything like that. And so if we have, may I have a motion to approve December minutes?
This is Pam Noble. I move to approve the minutes.
Perfect. May I have a second?
This is Asia Foster. I moved a second.
Perfect. All those in favor, thumbs up. And any opposed, same sign. Okay, so December minutes are approved. At each meeting, we do have an open forum where we provide the opportunity for Kansas to actually submit comments to the panel. We do not have any comments today, but please know that if you are interested in commenting or sharing information with the panel, we encourage you to submit your comments through the Kansas Open Forum comment form, which is located on the Kansas Children's Cabinet website by 5 o'clock on for the next meeting. We're actually going to have you submit your comments by Thursday, March the 16th. And so share your written comments or sign up to share, verbally for the panel meeting during this portion of the meeting. And so again, if you have anything that you would like to share or whatnot with the panel, we encourage you to submit the form. We'd love to hear from you. First on our agenda is we are going to have an early childhood system update, and that is going to be given to us by Lindsay Orion from KU. And so Lindsay, take it away.
Good morning, everyone. Nice to see you today. I am going to be stepping into the role that Hannah White was filling previously with the Children's Cabinet. I worked with KU Center for Public Partnerships and Research for about 4 years almost, and I've interacted with quite a few of you in that time. So I'm looking forward to helping to support this group. And please reach out at any point if there's anything I can do to be helpful in that endeavor. So in the email, we shared a couple of things, but I wanted to give a quick update in regards to some pretty exciting things that are happening in the early childhood system in Kansas. And most of those were actually shared during the Early Childhood Systems Building webinar this past Wednesday, maybe 2 Wednesdays ago on January 11th. So I encourage everyone to take a few moments to go and watch that webinar. Our main presenter for that was Executive Director of the Children's Cabinet, Melissa Rooker. And some of the things that were shared, I wanted to give a couple of quick updates about here today. So just a note, if you join the webinars on a regular basis, the schedule for 2023 is shifting to monthly. So we had our first webinar in January, and the next one will be February 8th. These should hopefully be opportunities to engage with other Kansans around early childhood related issues, think of new ideas, build connections, all of those things. So we hope you'll be able to join, and we'll make sure to keep you updated about what's coming up with that. You can register to add those to your calendar on the Children's Cabinet website. And if you can't find that information, please reach out and I'd be happy to help. Also want to remind everyone that we do have a weekly newsletter, the All In for Kansas Kids weekly newsletter. This is a great place to keep in touch with different exciting news that happens in the early childhood system, to hear about different activities and events. And I also want to encourage all of you to consider that as a great place to share things that might be happening in your circles, in your organizations as well. So keep that in mind and reach out if there's information that you feel would be helpful to share. There's a lot of professional development opportunities and conferences listed right now as we're looking ahead to this year. So some of the main things that were shared by Melissa Rooker during the webinar were that Kansas was awarded the 2023 PDG planning grant. So a little bit later on today, my colleague Erica Figueroa is going to share a little bit about that, but it is really exciting news. I want to say maybe there was about 10 awards, maybe 12, somewhere in there. So we're really excited to have the opportunity to continue to do great work and to have some funding to help with that. And many of you are connected to those efforts. There are some exciting workforce updates happening, which again are shared there as well. Things are moving right along with the early childhood career pathway and the workforce registry. So stay up to date, more information to come about that. We'll share it as far and wide as we can. But again, I know a lot of you are connected to those efforts as well. There is some exciting news about Spark funding, and Melissa Rooker shared about that, but I would also encourage you to keep an eye out and join or watch the Children's Cabinet and Trust Fund Board meeting on February 3rd. There will be a lot more details and a lot more information. So on the January 11th webinar, it was mostly just a, hey, this is coming, here's some of the pieces that might be involved, but there aren't a lot of details available yet. So watch for that. And the last piece was sort of celebrating and announcing the governor's first executive order of the year to create an early childhood transition task force. So information about that is available, and I think there will be more information to come there as well. And I do believe, hopefully we'll have more details if possible at the Children's Cabinet meeting too. So those are some pieces that you can find out more details about, but just wanted to make sure to call your attention as we kickstart the year together. The other piece I wanted to share with you all, many of you have already seen some emails coming through, but we were able to go ahead and get another Early Childhood Governance Summit scheduled. So similar to last year, for those of you who were able to join, We will hold this during one of the normal panel meeting times so that all of you are able to connect and hear about all the great information. And so this will happen during the February panel meeting time from 9 to 11:30. The goal of this is to help understand different initiatives and accomplishments and things that are happening connected to early childhood in Kansas, to think about and see what's coming in the course of this next year, and to, again, all work together to address and work on different aspects of our goals related to the early childhood strategic plan for Kansas. Just as a quick reminder, these are the groups that were invited. Hopefully, we'll be able to have people attend from all of them. And we're hoping to make a point to invite these groups, several of these groups, back on a more often basis to the panel, to keep continuing to give updates and offer opportunities to build connections across these systems. I do see there's a question or a hand raised. Riva, would you like to come off mute?
Yes, I was just wondering if this governance summit, is it going to be live streamed so that people outside this group can listen in?
Yes, absolutely. Just like all the panel meetings, excuse me, and this as well, we would love to have others watch the live stream. Definitely, we'll definitely plan to do that. And please, I'll make sure that this gets shared in the early childhood, the All In for Kansas Kids newsletter. But I'll try and send out some information for you all to share with your networks and colleagues as well, if there's anyone who'd like to listen in. Great. Any other questions about any of the information that I shared or the governance summit coming up next month? Okay. Well, I will, Cornelia, would it be okay to go ahead and just pass it to Erica, or would you like to do that?
Go for it.
Okay, I'll turn it over to my colleague, Erica Figueroa, who will be jumping in next to share some information about the PDG planning grant. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, and it's nice to see some familiar faces. My name is Erica Figueroa. I'm a research project manager at CPPR working with Lindsay, and I will be managing our PDG planning grant that we were awarded in December. Very exciting, as Lindsay has already said, that we were awarded this opportunity. The cabinet is going to be the lead applicant for this grant in collaboration with KSDE, KDHE, and DCF. It is only a one-year planning grant, so it is a very quick timeline going from last December to this December. The award is $4 million, and we have 5 federally defined activities. We're going to outline the first one in some of the coming slides, because that will be our first kind of task to deliver on. If you want to see kind of a full breakdown of all of the other activities, I really encourage you to go to the webinar on the 11th that when Lindsay discussed, and watch that, where Melissa has talked about kind of the full, more in-depth definitions of all of the other activities. The primary deliverables of this planning grant are a update to the comprehensive needs assessment. So as many of you were involved with the first PDG planning grant, there was a comprehensive needs assessment in 2019, and that needs assessment has been updated every year since, but this gives us the opportunity to go ahead and do another comprehensive needs assessment. And then once we have the results from that comprehensive needs assessment, we'll be working with stakeholders across the state. So families, you all in the panel, and different stakeholder groups to help update our All In for Kansas Kids strategic plan. So our first activity, which is really what we're focused on right now, is to collect and analyze existing needs assessments. So those data collection efforts that have happened since 2019, those data collection efforts that your organizations have embarked on. Really, one of our big hopes is to understand or dig into the impact of COVID and the relief funding that has gone out through COVID. There is a much more of a focus on the early childhood workforce. So really examining what that looks like, looking at the workforce data. There will be our Tomorrow's Story collections and sense-making sessions, along with community engagement sessions as we continue to do the needs assessment. And then finally, we'll be synthesizing these findings for the updated comprehensive needs assessment. So I do have an ask for all of you. The first ask is to just be aware that you or someone in your organization may be having an outreach from someone in the CPPR needs assessment team to follow up with you about data collection efforts that have happened previously or currently happening. And if you feel like your organization is currently completing a data collection effort or has recently completed an effort that you feel like would be fit in great with the data needed for this needs assessment around early childhood workforce, around the impact of COVID, please reach out to Chris Tilden. His email is there. ctilden@ku.edu, and with this information, and he will love to connect with you around completed or recently completed, or are going to complete here pretty soon. Should I pass it back to Cornelia?
There you go. So thank you. Thank you for the update and congratulations on receiving the grant. I was not surprised that Kansas actually received it because I remember, if I'm not making this up and tell me if I am, Lindsay, but like we had people from other states and other countries looking at the amazing things that you guys did with this grant. And so I was of the belief that they would be just silly to not give it to you guys if we had that kind of, awareness of the amazing things that you guys did and put together for our plan. And so so congratulations to all of you. I think it's definitely an indication of the good work that was done from your team. So thank you. All right, so next we are going to have Sarah Gardner, who is going to talk about proposed work groups for our upcoming panel meetings. And so did Sarah make it in yet?
She is joining, and I'm actually going to just cover this slide before I pass it over to her, if that's okay.
Go for it.
Awesome. Great. So as we are moving into 2023, there's been a lot of amazing work that has happened with the panel, and we want to help build on that and offer some opportunities to focus in and connect to work that's happening in the state. So Sarah is going to share a little bit more about that, but I wanted to cover sort of a little bit of a shift in what our meetings will look like as we approach March. So obviously we already have plans for today, and in February we'll be doing the Early Childhood Governance Summit. But in March, the meetings will look very similar. We'll start with approvals for any information that's needed related to agenda, minutes, anything else. We will have our tactic work groups based on what's decided and determined by the panel today. Jump in and share reports, question and answer, take any action based on what has happened from the previous meetings. So actually that would begin in April, since our potential focus for the work groups will happen in March. We'll do any general system updates, discussion, any activities or action that needs to happen with the full panel will continue in that time frame. We'll have time for bright spots, and then our meetings will formally convene, but we will hold the Zoom space, and just to sort of simplify the need to go to different Zoom links and Zoom rooms, all of those things, we're going to utilize the breakout feature and just offer space for different work groups to connect. after the meeting has formally convened. So you can take as much time or as little time as needed. You can schedule additional meetings outside of this time held, but it's just going to be space held and available for those groups to connect, but it's not going to fall sort of in the middle of the meeting as it has before. We'll just shift that to after the meeting has convened. So this is just sort of a slight shift, but hopefully we'll offer time and space as needed and streamline the meetings a little bit as well. I'm going to pass it over to Sarah Gardner to give a little bit more detail and introduction about the proposed tactic work groups, and there will be certainly opportunity for discussion, input, and thoughts from you all as well. So hand it over to Sarah.
Thanks, Lindsay. Can you hear me okay? Wonderful. Thanks for letting me come and talk a little bit about this different approach. So I've had the great fortune of facilitating the Child Care Recruitment and Retention Working Group from the recommendations panel. Some other members of our team at CBPR have helped facilitate the other groups, recognizing that we have really wonderful discussions in those working groups and feeling like there is a lot to tackle, and how do we break that down into something that feels like we're moving the work forward? And so we wanted to sort of reorient ourselves and this panel to the strategic plan. It's a plan built on all of the great work to establish what the needs in Kansas are. A lot of voices contributed to the strategic plan. We know that there's still a lot of work to be done with that strategic plan. There's a lot of good work that is happening and underway, and there are some tactics in the strategic plan that are there and could use some extra attention from the system. And the panel felt like the nicest organization of folks who have different experiences professionally, who come from all parts of the state, all sectors within the early childhood system. So not just childcare or home visiting, but really represent the full array of mixed delivery system. So here is the proposed approach to how we would think about breaking up the panel into different work groups. So rather than those 3 established working groups that would be live streamed, we would have tactic work groups, and it would be focused on addressing a specific tactic from the strategic plan. You would be able to choose which tactic you wanted to work on. If nothing felt like it aligned with your professional experience and your goals and your work, you could look through the strategic plan and propose another tactic that really did, and you could elevate that to the panel. Work groups are whatever size they need to be to get the work done. So it could be 3 people, it could be 7 people, it could be 12 people, whatever it takes to kind of move the work forward and get the right requisite diversity of thoughts and ideas and experiences to put forth a next step. So as we go forward, we will ask each of you to select a work group that is aligned with those interests and professional responsibilities. And again, if nothing that we are proposing to start with checks those boxes, please, we will take some time today and look through the strategic plan and see if there are other tactics. There's no minimum or maximum. So if 3 is the magic number, Schoolhouse Rock in my head, if 3 is the magic number, then that is fine. If the panel wants to tackle 5 or 6 tactics, that's also fine as well. So it's really about the work that you guys are passionate about and want to bring forward for the betterment of the system, broadly speaking. The tactic work groups will have time, as Lindsay indicated, following each general panel meeting. So we will use the breakout features of Zoom to do those meetings. So you'll have at least an hour each month to work on your tactics. You can also establish additional working time if that works for your group. So that's totally up to you. Those breakouts will not be broadcast. So our panel meeting as a whole will cease the broadcast at the end of the general panel meeting so that the working groups can go do their thing. The goal is to have some next step about that tactic. We have talked about recommendations. This group has made recommendations to the full cabinet board as the Early Childhood Advisory Council. If you have that level of detail and specificity to produce a recommendation, that's wonderful. If you feel like this tactic really needs a different governance group to come in, that assignment and delegation to that governance group is also something we would ask you to do. If, we need more research on this, we need more information, we don't have enough to move this tactic forward, it's really having you unpack and untangle what it takes to get to that tactic and put on paper. Maybe it's an action plan, maybe it's a formal recommendation, but it's accountability and responsibility for moving that tactic forward to completion. That's the intent. What that looks like is really up to your work group and what makes the most sense. The goal is to have this done by the end of this panel's one-year term. So this panel group, the term ends in June. So the goal is to have that June panel meeting be where that work is finished. If you're finished before that, that's wonderful and fantastic, and that's great. If you're sort of in the middle, what's the action steps that need to happen? So that can be, and would you recommend that tactic working group continue in the next panel cycle, et cetera? So we wanted to put some date on it just to create some sense of like, how do we work back from a product that this panel group can feel like they've gotten to a point where it's either handing off to the next panel group or it's completing a recommendation. So the next steps for this, submit your preference. So obviously, if nothing strikes your interest with the 3 we're going to propose, please do some deep dive into the strategic plan and identify a tactic that you're passionate about. We'd like you to submit that information, and I think Lindsay's going to have some instruction about how to do that by the end of February. So you have some time to think about what that is, or to look at other tactics and see if there's something else that you feel passionate about and you think that the panel, as sort of this system, this mixed delivery system representation, needs to tackle and elevate. Any questions on any of that? Okay. So we pulled 3 tactics that we felt were extensions of the working groups that were there. So the quality environments working group, the family engagement working group, and the childcare recruitment and retention working group. So we tried to look at the notes from those working groups. What were sort of the conversations happening that we felt aligned to a specific tactic that we could call out? So these are the proposed 3 tactics. I cannot stress proposed enough. If they don't feel right, you are invited and encouraged to say they don't feel right and suggest alternatives. So the first tactic is 712. So if you have your strategic plan handy, you can certainly turn to that page and read it for yourself. But it's essentially about studying zoning and homeowner associations that potentially adversely affect the ability to operate childcare. We hear about this in anecdotes across the state. I will also say that the childcare licensing team and Melissa Schoenberger are starting to look into this to sort of compile information that helps inform what some of these things might be. So there is a energy around this, and there's certainly information to draw from. So this is not something that's starting at a 0 point. But it's something we've heard is a big challenge, particularly for our family childcare providers. And the goal would be to potentially identify what those barriers are. Potential solutions to it could be language that you can offer to communicate to HOAs, language that you could propose to actually change some of those zoning laws and HOA laws. So it's really about like uncovering what is the barrier, because we keep hearing zoning's a problem, without the specificity to actually get to a point to address it. So we're really looking for something that gets to specificity to potentially address it. So again, you have a partner in the CCL team at KDHE that is trying to help pull together a starting point for this, but we would want a group of folks to take it further and look into it and decide, is there a solution? Is there a recommendation that can be made to address this tactic that we heard in our needs assessment was a big challenge, particularly for family childcare? The next one's a little bit bigger. So this comes from the childcare recruitment and retention working group. We heard loud and clear, like wages, like we don't have enough childcare providers. We know, like, statistically speaking and anecdotally speaking, there's just not enough educators in our system, not by a long shot. So recruitment, of course, is an issue. And then we know that professionals are leaving the field, and so retention is an issue. We also know that there are different approaches to solutions for how to address workforce recruitment and retention challenges happening at all levels, not just at local levels, but also at the legislative level as well. Lots of people are looking at this. So the goal with this is to put some of those things on paper. I feel like whenever we get some of the questions around like, what are the biggest challenges? We always say wages. Wages, of course, is a significant issue. What are some of the other actual like listing out the barriers so that the system can have a comprehensive list and say this is as a system the things that we need to be addressing, and so everyone can kind of speak from the same understanding of what's going on. This could be something that's very nuanced. So it's recruitment of a specific educator. Maybe it's an entry-level educator in a specific region who speaks a specific language. So you can get as granular or as high level as you want, but I think this is just about capturing what everybody already knows and what everybody says and all the conversations you have with your elected officials, with your chamber members, with your EcoDevo folks who are like, how do we help? What's the biggest issue? You're saying all of these things. How do we put this on paper? And then potentially like look at like creating an action plan around addressing some of these things. Because this is such a hot topic, I thought we could spend a little bit of time today just listing from the whole group what this would be and get a starting point for that tactic working group to have at their fingertips. And then the final tactic we're proposing has to do with the coming out of sort of that family navigation standpoint. So there is a wonderful group in Kansas, the Kansas Power of the Positive, led by the team at KCSL, who we actually just took their strategies and their tactics and dropped it into the strategic plan. So strategy 4.2 includes 3 specific tactics, and they're all around family-friendly workplaces. So there is a lot of information out there from the K-pop team. Many of you might be on that group already, have seen the one-pagers they have produced. I know they have some really good partnerships with different corporations who have adopted some of these family-friendly practices. How can we amplify that? Because the panel is sort of representing the system. How can we amplify that work that's happening and make it so that all of those resources are even more broadly available? And also, what additional work can we add to that? So childcare tax credits for businesses. We know that there's stuff happening in that space. I just read yesterday that Missouri is doing a bunch of stuff related to tax credits for childcare. So how do we potentially add on to that to ensure that all of our public and private sectors are thinking about different ways to create family-friendly workplaces? How do we elevate and amplify the work happening of K-pop and also add to it potentially if that's appropriate based on the members of the tactic work group? Any questions about any of those 3? Okay, I think we can go to the next slide. So this is about, are those right? So you've heard my pitch for those 3 based on the work that you all have done over the fall period. Are those right? Are there more? I thought we could take a few minutes and just go through. You can find the strategic plan on the cabinet website. If you don't have a physical copy, we'd love to mail you one as well, so you have it handy. But we'd encourage you to take a minute and look through it and see if there are others that you feel really passionate about that you think our system as a whole needs to have more of a spotlight on. That's one of the beauties of the panel is you can elevate things to a systems level that may be living in a pocket of the system and need to be elevated. So now would be the time to potentially look through that and make a few suggestions. And then I think the thought would be if there are tactics to add that we would ask the full panel to sort of decide if they want to tackle those. Rita.
My first comment is, how do you pick? I guess I do have a question, and that would be if the recruitment and retention topic is so big, as you identified. Depending on the interest, I wonder if there might be consideration of breaking that into two different groups. One being focused on retention of our current workforce and one being focused on recruitment of the new. It's a huge topic. So I'm just throwing that out for thought.
Megan, go ahead.
Yeah, this is Megan Smith, and Reba, you got my wheels spinning. And I mean, I think we understand too that recruitment and retention are somewhat intertwined, right? But I think we also know what some of the biggest issues are related to those. So I kind of wonder if breaking it up into one of those being compensation, we know that that is a big issue. So I think it could be interesting to mull over that. I know we have lots of conversations in a variety of different places, but if part of the goal is to really come up with those strategies and say, here's how we do it, here's who can help, here's some different ideas that we can actually put into practice. I kind of wonder if we couldn't take some of the key factors that we know, well, that I think we can say we know, that we know are really impacting that recruitment and retention of current and new workforce, that those might be the sort of subgroups of that.
This is Trisha Wagoner with KDHE, and I agree. Let's pull, we know compensation is a big stumbling block. And that is a huge topic in and of itself. I think it would be a good idea to pull that out separately and have someone working just on that.
Would compensation, oh, this is Cornelia Stevens, would compensation, would that also then mean funding streams? Or to be able to support compensation, or would that be, that would be part, is that like part of the general tactic or things that need to be discussed in order to increase compensation?
There's a lot that goes in. This is Trisha Wagoner again. There's a lot that goes into compensation. You have to look at affordability for parents. You have to look at funding streams. You have to look at general compensation packages. Like, it's not just pay, which is a problem, but it's also like the overall package. Are there other things that can be added to that to make childcare a more attractive career for folks?
Right. So if it was pulled out into its own tactic, then it would include all of that. I guess is what I'm asking is that it would include, it would encompass everything.
We have a message in the chat that says I'd be in favor of an entire group dedicated to 611 in the strategic plan. Echoing Megan's point, I agree compensation needs a focus and creating tangible ideas of what a Kansas model would look like.
Thanks for reading that, Julia. And Julia also put the link to, this is Sarah Gardner. Julia also put the link in the chat where you can find the strategic plan. So 611, develop recommendations to increase compensation and benefits for early childhood care and professionals, literally verbatim what I think I heard Trisha and Megan both articulate. Any other tactics?
This is Amy Gotchammer. I'm not sure where it specifically falls in the strategic plan, but just as a director, I'm thinking in terms of retention, a lot of times I've got teachers that have been with me for, more than a decade, and it's not because of the wages. So, some of what you build within your programs comes from somewhere else, right? It comes from other than the compensation package.
Right.
So, does it have to do with, how do we help other programs build, whether it's a certain culture within your program, whether it's a pride in your program, whether it's being able to show that you've, I'm thinking along the lines of, hey, we were KQRIS, a program, or now we're a Links to Quality program. And look what I'm a part of. I'm a part of something I'm really proud of. And, so building those sorts of things that don't have dollar signs necessarily attached to them, but that help people stay in one place and reduce that turnover, and keep people retained to one program. So I'm not sure quite, like, say, how that pulls or ties directly to the strategic plan, but I feel like somehow in there I've got a kernel of an idea that somehow that ties into retention, and maybe that can be fleshed out in some way.
Amy, I like that. I'll respond to that, but I'll let Lisa share her thoughts.
Sorry, just to reiterate what Amy said, I have a couple of staff people that have been with us over 20 years, and they were part of the Links to Quality and those programs when they were out about 15 years ago. That working towards continuing education piece for many providers or educators is really important, because the financial piece isn't enough. They have to have some pride in it, and that's the piece that we struggle with a lot, because some of this has to be educating the public that just because you choose a provider, the education piece has to be part of it, and it's tough. That's all.
I think Lisa, this is Sarah Gardner. Lisa and Amy, both of you articulated that exactly why that tactic is there, is that yes, wages is a significant thing. If someone threw $1 billion at maybe $4 billion at wages in Kansas, would that be sufficient? And if the answer is no, then how do we document those other pieces that are critical, and then maybe highlight where they're starting to do things right now? I mean, each of you spoke to having long-term employees. What have you been able to do that is retaining them? We know there are bright spots all across the state. I'm looking at Tanya Bullock on my screen. I know she's done some stuff at Child Start to recruit and retain. I know there's lots of subgrantees who've done some things. So I think it's an and, it's not an or at this point. So I want to encourage you all to think there are enough folks around this table who can put pen to paper and flesh some of this stuff out, even if it's not implementation all the way through to the end, but it's an identification. So when you get the question from somebody who's interested in your community, what are the challenges? You have something that your peers across the mixed delivery system have informed. Tricia, go ahead.
I think that a lot of this actually feeds back into, what Lisa was saying about working, educating the public. We need to make sure that folks see early childhood childcare providers as professionals. And that links back into pride in their work, that leads back into fair compensation. It leads back into a lot of this. Is we as a society need to think of this as a profession, and a profession that it deserves respect and deserves compensation.
Cornelia. Cornelia, did you have something to add to that? Yeah.
I do. One of the things that, as we work regularly on our strategic plan, we look at recruitment and retention, right? I mean, that's the big issue, across the state. And then we talk about compensation, including all of the things that we talk about in terms of what makes up compensation. But a lot of the reasons that our teachers are leaving, or that even what I'm hearing from the school districts, are the social emotional challenges that are happening, and it becomes very draining, very difficult for teachers to have the same joy, in the work that they're doing, when they feel like there's just a battle happening every day. And, a lot of us work with at-risk children. And so that kind of, so we know that, part of that is we're going to have some of that in our environment, but it seems over the past 3 years that we've definitely seen more of that. And so what type of supports can be put in place to be able to help, our teachers, our staff be more successful, to feel more supported, because that's part of how you retain, when they know that they're not just out there floundering on their own, but they actually have a support system in place to be able to help them, then it makes it easier to move forward. But if it's just me trying to make stuff up and figure out what's going to go on, and I don't have a support system here, meanwhile, I have all of these children who are struggling, who are hurting, who have needs, and they don't know how to sit on the couch and talk to somebody about it. So we're seeing that, in the classroom, how do we do more to then be able to help them? And so again, it's beyond just compensation, and all of the things that make that up, but also, providing the support needed for the teachers to be successful.
Another comment from the chat, and the EC providers need their own mental health supports.
Maritas, go ahead.
This is Maritas. I just have a question. I know that teacher retention and recruitment is also an issue for teachers that are working in schools, but there was a study that was done in 2021 about the teacher retention initiative to look at that and listen. There were over 20,000 teachers participated. So my question is, has there been a study that was done also about teacher retention for early childhood in this population? The purpose of the study that was done was to understand the driving factors of teacher retention and to provide actionable insights to improve teacher engagement and retention in that population. And I think it was done, there were two professionals that does it, I forgot, but it was in partnership with Emporia State, the Kansas Association of School Boards, the Kansas National Education Association, and the USA Kansas. So my thing is, it might be good to look at and listen to our childcare providers if there is a study that will be conducted. Just my thought. I was just thinking, because it's a huge issue.
I think, Maritas, you just identified an actual step that could be recommended, or at least a compilation of what may be already out there of what exists. I know we've got several different organizations that have been serving providers and families for different purposes. Tricia, go ahead.
Oh, the surveying providers, that's a great point. I also wonder, it might be more difficult. Would there be a way to survey folks who have recently left the field and ask the question, why did you leave? Not just folks that are currently in the field, and that it might be more difficult to find folks that have recently left the field rather than those that are currently in, but it would give a lot of insight.
I'll just jump in to say, when we, this is Crystal Henry with the Family Conservancy. when we surveyed our the teachers in our partner programs for Start Young, we went ahead and asked the current teachers, if you had left, what was that reason, or if you had left and come back. And so there were a lot of people who had, so we could still ask that question with the current teachers, because a lot of them had gone somewhere else and then realized that, you know, they could make it work because they loved the work. So so it was still, we didn't have to go find people. They were teaching again.
So I've actually been capturing a few of these things so that a tactic working group would have this list that you all just generated in 10 minutes that could help, and you could pull it apart into multi-tactics. Again, this work doesn't have to stop in June. It's just, the panel does potentially turn over on an annual basis. And so we want every member of the panel to feel like they had a hand in something concrete that is moving the system forward. So I think what I heard, and Lindsay and Cornelia, I'd certainly defer to you guys on this, is that document recruitment and retention tactic work group can exist and maybe stay high level on these things, and then perhaps pull out 611 as Logan suggested about addressing compensation. So we would have 4 tactics that the panel members could choose from. Oh, and Reva suggested pulling recruitment and retention apart too. So that could be one tactic working group that splits off into 2. It could be a 5th tactic working group where 2 people are just working, or 2 groups are just working on one. It's really up to you guys how you want to self-organize and what makes the most sense for the headspace that you're in and the interest area that you have and the challenges that you might be experiencing directly. Does 4 sound good? Okay. Couple of thumbs up. You guys are already doing the work. So so just a reminder to kind of close, Lindsay can send some stuff out after this to clarify what those tactic working groups are. You'll make a selection about which one you want to be in. If nothing is really calling to you in your work, certainly let Lindsay know that as well. We want to be able to have something that feels like it's a good part of your time and contributes to your work as well. And we'll also make some of those other resources, the K-pop, some of the licensing work and some of that available to those tactic working groups as well. And then your next step would be let her know your preference, and then come March, in that March meeting, after the full meeting group work or has their meeting, there'll be breakouts, and you'll just join the breakout and start your work in whichever way makes sense to you. Any questions? Appreciate your willingness to give this one a try. That's all I have, Lindsay and Cornelia. Thank you.
So next we have an opportunity for you as panel members to provide bright spots. And so does anybody have anything happening within their organization or community that you would like to share with the panel and those watching live stream? Brenda?
Yes, thank you. The first 1,000 Days Kansas is hosting a summit on March 9th in Topeka. It's a full day in-person summit, And one of the sessions around the first 1,000 days that we know is important is this very topic, early childcare and childhood education. And we are hosting Melissa Rooker and Logan Stensing will be presenting at the summit. So I know that you all are excited to hear them, and we invite you to join for either their session or for the full day. And I will put into the chat the link for the agenda, which includes the registration, and it is free.
Any other bright spots? Megan?
Well, I will be honest, this isn't so much a Kansas bright spot or a personal bright spot, but I think it's information that's worth sharing within this group in case people don't know. But the National Early Childhood Education Workforce Center has been awarded. And so excited to see that that work is going to be getting started. It's been awarded to the Build Initiative, which does a lot of work within the quality improvement sector. And that's going to be done in partnership with Child Trends, the Center for the Study of Childcare Employment, and ZTT. So I just thought that that might be interesting information that, especially as we're just talking about recruitment and retention, that may be an additional new resource that this group and Kansas can pull from.
Yep, thank you, Megan. Logan?
I was just going to say congrats to everybody involved in the preschool development block grant and getting that around again. I know I've been talking to folks about it in my neck of the woods, and so was super excited to see that we got that. Know that that was not made, possible, of course, by all the work that you all did with the first one, and then of course, making sure our proposal was great. And so I'm excited to see how we can make progress on a lot of the ideas in that. So thank you again to all the folks involved in making that.
Agreed. Thank you, Logan. Any other bright spots? Michelle?
Yeah, I just want to mention it's not new, but DCF does have a mobile crisis helpline. Well, it's not it's KDADS to help with mental health crisis for people that are 20 years of age and younger. It's for families. And I can drop the phone number for that crisis helpline in the chat.
If there's any pieces that anyone wants to share, this is Lindsay O'Ryan with the group as a whole. If you want to email those to me as well, I can make sure and include them in a follow-up email to everyone. That way, in case there's any members missing today, they'll be included as well.
Any other bright spots? And thank you very much for sharing. Jennifer.
Yes, hi, this is Jennifer Francois. I just wanted to share that I'm really fortunate to be a part of some new projects that are coming out of some recovery funds through DCF that support childcare providers in two areas. One of which is early childhood mental health, and the other is developmental inclusion, particularly focused on providing support around collaboration and teaming between Part C and Part B, but also supporting childcare providers on supporting children with disabilities in their environment. And so those projects fall under the broader Infant Toddler Specialist Network umbrella. And so if folks are interested, they're more than welcome to reach out to me. And then, sorry, I lost the facilitator's picture. And so I can send all of that information if people are interested in learning more.
Anyone have anything else to share? Okay, if no, then our upcoming meeting, remember that the February meeting is, well, actually, our Children's Cabinet and Trust Fund meeting is going to be on Friday, February 3rd, from 9 to 12 p.m. Okay, there you go. Sorry, I was about to knock over my camera. And then we do have our Early Childhood Government Summit, which is going to be on Friday, February 17th. And it's going to be during our typical panel meeting time, so from 9 to 11:30. So we look forward to seeing everyone in attendance there and getting all of the updates from all of the organizations that were provided. With that being said, our meeting is adjourned for the day. I would like to thank you all again for spending your Friday morning with us. Thank you for everyone who's been watching live stream, and everybody have a safe weekend and look forward to seeing you next month. Take care, everyone.